Okay, well,
There it is.
wow. Thank you, everyone. We have on the first episode of this new show, we have Dale Crow here, and this is the finding the true escape, the true release is in the mind. And Dale is someone that I have known mostly through his letters, believe it or not. We've had And it wasn't even like a two-way pen pal thing. It was like a one-way stream of
Yeah.
letters from Dale that my heart was opening when I was reading them and tears coming. And then there was brief times when I'd be at a restaurant with Jeffrey JC and he said, I can call him. I can call him and we'd have a nice talk there and hear each other's voices for the first time. And now we've been on WhatsApp having
Yeah,
some
yeah.
calls and so I'm just so honored to have you on because I really feel like you have really been working it, this inner healing in such a dramatic way. And of course, I think probably it was your time in prison, where you were kind of a captive audience, we'll say, to the spirit. You were a captive audience. You really faced a lot of emotions and went through a lot of healing that sometimes people can take many decades or lifetimes, but I think you went through things in such a radical way. But first of all, just because some of the people know you and some of them don't, maybe you can just share a little bit about yourself and your journey and go back as far as you want, because I know from your letters, we got into a lot of things. You were retracing your story a bit to go through and look at those patterns and belief patterns that were in there. And yeah, you can just pick it up from wherever you'd like to so people can kind of get to know a little bit about the backdrop story.
So I didn't know anything about the backdrop or anything like that. I didn't know about the characters and the beliefs, the thoughts and the feelings and all that stuff to trace it back. I didn't know any of that. But as I got into the course and I started finding your teachings, I started tracing my story back. A lot of people can just wake up to that presence I was talking about. Which not a lot of people, but it's a few people wake up to that presence and they're just here. Now that's their awakening. I had to go through, it seemed like because my beliefs were so strong, I had to keep coming through the story and coming through the story and getting out all the fleas, all the ticks. I use the dog analogy because I used to watch dogs a lot and watching the fleas out of them. And I got to keep coming out the ticks, and that's how it was for my personality. I got to keep combing it out because I got these unhealed memories that were coming forth. And for me, right at the end of my prison sentence, I was a clerk for the sergeant, and he had me. I more or less chose what type of people would be in our dorm because we had a nice dorm to live in. So he would trust my word that these people would fit the mold. They can stay here. Well, there was a kid out there waving his hand around, trying to get my attention, and he wanted me to get him in the dorm. And I'm looking at him, so I walk out, and he picks me up, and he grabs me, and he's hugging me, and I'm like, I don't know what to do, because he's smaller than me, but I don't know what to do. I said, hey. So he is, I'm so proud of you. I used to watch you fight all the time. We used to go in the bars and watch you fight. And I don't know who he is. I said, who are you again? And I grabbed his ID. And when I read the name on it, said Keith Wright. And I got emotional. I teared up right away. I said, he goes, whoa, well, what'd I do? He said, are you okay? Are you mad at me? I said, no, no. I said, you don't know who you are to me. Like to me, that all it came back, like, this is what happened to me. And I got bullied by this guy, probably about fourth grade, around 12 years old. And it was in front of people that I sought approval from. I wanted to fit in with. And it embarrassed me so bad that, that I sought to learn how to fight again because I said I need to learn how to fight. I don't want this to ever happen to me again. So that created the boxer. I went to learn how to fight and I became a boxer. Well, around that same time, I had no confidence. This is as far back as I can think. I've never had any confidence. I never had low self-esteem. I had no self-worth. And I sought the attention from my dad growing up really bad, and he never gave it to me because I couldn't measure up to what he wanted me to be. I was a linky kid. I didn't. I wanted to learn how to be like him. So the boxing fit that mold. So from learning that, I went through the boxing all through high school and all through everyone eventually that became my identity, and I grew so attached to that identity that. But take it back to when I first started boxing. So I'm at the swimming pool. I had this desire, this crush, this obsession over this girl that used to go to the pool, and her name was Dina Hard. And I used to go to the pool every day just to sit there, and I hope I could meet her, just so I could meet her one day. I didn't have the courage to talk to her because she was intimidating to me. So my friends went off apparently and told her that I wanted to meet her, and she has no fear whatsoever. So she's just walking over to me, and she's going to give me a chance to talk to her. I stood up and I ran. I ran out of the pool. I ruined it, like, and it was one of those moments where I just, I always regretted not knowing what would happen if I talked to her. I never could approach her again because I felt like at that time after I got bullied, I didn't have any confidence to approach someone like that. So, all these years go by, and I meet this guy, Keith Wright, the bully, in prison at the end of my prison sentence after I've done all this healing. And this is like the final finale. Like, this is who made this concept. This is who I can't forgive, is the Dale Crow that I created. So this kid comes up to me, when I explained to him who he is, how he embarrassed me and he humiliated me, and I've taken that to heart all these years. I said, there is no Dale the Boxer without you, without a Keith Wright. And he said, are you saying that I committed your crime for you? And I said, not exactly, but I said, let's face it. I said, let's face it. I don't think I would have ever become the boxer had you not have done it to me as a kid. So we don't know, but this is why I feel the way I feel. So that healed that memory, and he was getting ready to go home, and we ended up becoming real good friends right before he got out. And I was able to take care of I gave him some food, got him on his feet, and made sure he had a good trip home. So, but we got to walk the track together daily. We would talk, and he said, "Man, I was just trying to fit in." He goes, I was afraid of you, and I would have never guessed that. But hearing him talk and hearing the humanness of him, I healed that link back then, and it strengthened all the memories and all the failures I've had through the years on stuff. Like, it relates back to how I felt about what I believed about myself. And I felt so amazing. And I said, wow, I gotta have who else can I do this with? And I watched that movie, The Kid, with Bruce Willis.
Hmm.
And that's kind of like what reminded me what happened to me, because it made a new me in this moment right now. It made me a new self. And I could let go of that image that I didn't believe in. And I felt so confident around her. But I said, who else could I do this with? So I thought back to my first desire. I wonder what she's doing now. And I contacted a friend, and I said on Facebook, could you look her up and find out where she's at? I haven't seen her in 35 years. Just want to know where she's at. She's in Florida. Turned out she was not married, had no boyfriend, nothing, and we just connected. So I poured my heart out to her in the letters. You know how my letters are, David. So
Yeah.
I poured my heart out to her, told her exactly what happened and how I felt about her all these years, and she responded. I was here. She responded to me, and again, all these feelings come back, this confidence come back, and it healed me, And we connected, and when she started coming to visit me and stuff, it just took off. Now we're married. I live in Florida with her, and it's a beautiful, beautiful reality.
This
And
is like a movie of the week, though. If anybody in Hollywood ever finds out about this, that you didn't stand up to your
oh,
bully of your childhood. You ended up befriending and forgiving and loving the bully of the childhood and marrying your childhood crush, having not been in contact with her for 35 years. This is something like a movie of the year. This is just
how
absolutely such a demonstration of healing that it's so deep.
do I get you guys back on here, David? I lost you. There we are. There we go. Okay. I was panicking. I was like, I love
It's
I
this new
thought
technology thing. Now that you're out, you have to deal with all this technological stuff that we all have to deal with now.
it baffles me. It does. People, little people come up to me in the store all the time and help me out. Like, oh, sweetheart, let me help you out here. They can tell that I'm lost. I don't have any idea what I'm doing. So everyone helps out. They assist me.
Uh,
So yeah, and it's just as I look back, that was my final healing, because for me, I got out and I came home, with Dina, and we're married today. And like I said, life's beautiful. Everything was like almost synchronistic for us. Like it fell in place. I got out after 20 years. I didn't have a driver's license. They just gave me one. I didn't have to retest nothing. He just said, "Step behind the camera. I got you." And he takes the picture. And
Wow.
so I'm driving, and the only thing I struggle with, I will say that is it goes back to my what I believe about myself and all in conditioned years of not believing in having any confidence in what I can do, my unworthiness, whatever. And I was having trouble getting a job. So it's like no one wanted anything to do with me because they all they saw was my past, my record. And I was struggling with that for a while. And, just a few weeks ago, I told them I couldn't start until the first. So just a few weeks ago, I did. I sat out there and I thought about it in contemplation, and I say it's my belief about myself. It's what I'm doing. I'm doing this to myself. I'm seeing it. I'm doing it to myself. And so I changed that and I reset. My reset got activated and I reset. And I got an interview that day at 1:30. So I go down there to the interview and I'm sitting out in the parking lot. I was like, I'm doing this to myself. I'm doing this to myself. So I got to reset. I'm worthy of this job. I can get this job, and this job is mine. So I walk into the interview and this is the first time this ever happened to me. I walk in, I'm looking for a guy named Steve. And I walk in, I said, I'm looking for Steve. And he stands up, he said, "Dude, you're hired." And he shakes my hand. I don't
No
even say nothing.
interview. No
No interview.
interview.
He said, "You're hired." I said, I'm tatted out, tattooed out. And he looks at me. I said, "This is just like that." He says, "Well, sit down. Tell me about yourself." And so this is where I think I'm going to get hung up because as soon as I start telling my story, I've been to prison. This is why I was in there. And we'll have our people call you. No one ever calls. So that in the end of the interview. So I sat down and I started explaining to him, where everything went wrong I paralyzed someone in 2001. And I said I took that fight to heart. And I said I didn't really get a chance to finish my career. I said because my heart was no longer into it, so I stopped. And I couldn't even get to the part where I said I started spiraling downhill, got depressed. He said, "So you felt bad? You retired then, right? So what'd you do through your years?" I said, "Well, and I didn't lie to him. I said I mentored and I did peer-to-peer counsel and I facilitated classes to troubled youth." And that was it. He said, "I've heard enough." He said, "You're hired. When can you
Yeah.
start?" I said, "Well, I can't start until the first. I have a few doctor appointments I got to meet, and I'd hate to start and have to take off." So he said, "I'll see you on the first." And so that's why I start Friday. I
Yeah.
start as a
And
personal trainer.
if we go back to that too, I think that's interesting because there's a lot of times people begin their like a spiritual journey kind of in an active way when something seems to happen in form. Like maybe it's somebody who got drafted or enlisted to be in the war and they shoot somebody or they're in some kind of strict crazy situation where it's just wild and chaotic and they call it friendly fire where you know, they shoot one of their own people, like Born on the Fourth of July, with Tom Cruise, classic movie where he's in combat and he shoots and kills one of his buddies on his side. And then the whole movie is him having to finally go back to the parents and he's crying and he's just trying to say, you know, that he killed their son. Even though it was friendly fire, it was very chaotic. But when you said you were boxing, though, you had a boxing match where somebody got paralyzed
From the
from the
neck down.
fight, from the neck
Right.
down.
From
And
the neck
so it
down.
wasn't even that like something like somebody being killed, but just the fact that you were perceiving someone from the neck down couldn't move, was paralyzed. That's what started you thinking about maybe boxing isn't for me. After all those years of that self-concept, it was a crack.
It was a crack, and then, like I said, as I did time in prison, I had time to think. That crack widened, and I realized I never really even liked boxing. I never loved it. I loved attention. I loved recognition. And I loved it. When I started learning about the ego, I learned that's what's keeping me going in boxing. It's because I said I just wanted people to validate me, and that's who I believed I was. And that the most important question came to me when I was failing at boxing is, who am I if I'm not the boxer? I'm losing fights now because I didn't want to fight anymore, but my sponsors are paying my bills. I'm going to lose. I'm losing fights. I can't step up to the plate, and I panicked. I panicked like, who am I if I'm not this? And that's the most terrifying question to let go of, and I faced it again and again and again in prison, and I'm facing it again now. Even who am I if I'm not something? What if I'm nobody?
Yeah, yeah,
Nobody. So, but it actually, the more I sit with it, it feels really good. It does. It feels good, and
yeah,
I don't have to be somebody. I just have to be
yeah.
nobody because
Yeah, your story is reminding me. We have this thing called Movie Watcher's Guide to Enlightenment because I know you like the movies and everything. But there was a boxer, Hurricane Carter, who was imprisoned for something that he did not do, and he spent, like you, many, many years in prison. And he was reading J. Krishnamurti and doing the same thing you did in prison. He was going inside towards self-realization, towards the healing, the inner healing, releasing the past. And I think what's so great about A Course in Miracles, what Jesus is teaching us through the Course, and I know you were reading my books there in prison, it's like, so are you telling me that I'm forgiven because I didn't do what I thought I did? I'm forgiven because I actually, in reality, really didn't do what I thought I did, what a lot of people thought I did, and so forth. And this is how radical you have to go that deep because it's not about making up for what you did or trying to overcompensate. Of course, that was a lot of how the ego takes us on a false identity trip of overcompensating for guilt around things that we were sure we did. And Jesus has taken us in so deep, and he's saying, actually, it was a misperception. You have a misperception of the whole world, including your personal identity. And that misperception in your mind is a fragmenting ego belief. And so I know for most everyone, you have to go through what seems to be the personal experiences, and then you have to face how you feel. Like even when the man that you, in the world's terms, you seem to murder Frank, didn't you say that at some? I remember you wrote me a letter one time where wasn't it his daughter was coming to
his
see you?
sister,
His
his
sister,
sister.
his sister was coming to see you in prison, and you were like, "Wow, this is going to be a real adventure." Maybe you can share about that because that's where the healing comes in deep when you have to face things that way. That seems like a pretty extreme situation.
I had to face what I hated most about myself, and that was the biggest mistake ever. And when I seen what was taking place in prison with you and everything, and all this healing was taking place, now all of a sudden I got a letter from her, which I never in a million years would have imagined she would write me. And they called me in and said, "Hey, this person wants to visit you. They're going to do a victim dialogue." And I never imagined that could have. That's what I hoped for. I hoped for the mother to actually come see me, but just the fact that it was his family members coming to see me. We grew up together, so she's coming to see me now, and I had to go through a few weeks of rehearsing what was going to take place and getting all the hard questions out of the way because they didn't want something to take place where I gave an abrupt answer that wasn't expected, and she, I get attacked right there in the visit room or something. So it was she because she prepared herself immensely. I mean, I can't explain how she was so strong to sit there and listen. I gave her the truth that I was transparent when I went out there, and I told her everything that happened, why I did what I did, and when she left that meeting, she said, I feel at peace with things, and of course the ego came right back on me, and all of a sudden I got presented with, well, hey, go on camera with this and tell the world about it. And so right after she left, the camera crew came in to videotape me, and I felt like it wasn't authentic. I believed that I did. I attached some old beliefs to myself, and I told what I thought was relative to what I was willing to accept about myself. What wouldn't make me look bad to the world. That's all I cared about was what other people thought about me. So,
That was like a double whammy. First, you face her, his
and
sister,
they
and
take
then
the
they
right.
come running in with Boy, the ego is a clever, sneaky one that throws a camera crew in right afterwards, to really try to catch you off guard.
Yeah, I thought I was free after that, and I felt like the world been lifted off me. But when they came back and said, "Hey, we're going to put this on YouTube," and they never did, because I lied. They never did because she said no, don't put that up because I only told what I felt was acceptable to the world, and
Yeah.
I didn't say what I told her. And that wasn't right. And I apologized to her. I wrote her a letter what I did, and whether or not she, I don't know if she believes me or not now, but I have to believe me. It comes from me. So I had to accept what I had done, you know,
Yeah, yeah. It's
and
anything can be used. I mean, I have a friend who was a longtime Course in Miracles student, and one of his family members was killed, and yet when he went into court to testify, he right there in court, he said, "I forgive you." He basically recorded it and put it up on YouTube where he was just sharing love and forgiveness when he was called upon to say, "What do you have to say? You're the brother of the deceased. What do you have to say?" And he came right out, and it's one of those examples that's still on YouTube because it was such an example of forgiveness. And I feel like that's what you're representing now is, all these things you've faced, all these memories, all these things you've been able to go back into your mind and take it all the way down to the belief, to the thoughts and the beliefs. And that's really
yeah,
what the forgiveness is.
I started, like I said, when I was at a place where the reception center was, and that's when I first started reading your books, David. And that's what got me into the Course in Miracles. Because I'll be honest with you, I had read people like David Hawkins and things like that, and Deepak Chopra, and they had led me to a Course in Miracles. I said, "What's this?" And I skimmed through it, and I didn't understand any of it when I first started. This is back in maybe 2010, 2009. When I started coming across your books, I read it. What it was is it was something about your dad. There was an article done on your dad, and you had in an excerpt got taken out where you was talking about how hard of a time you had with your father growing up, and you had a healing meeting with him. I really resonated with how because my dad's a big part of my story, and so when I started getting into your teachings and everything, and I understood it. It's like, okay, now I can go into the course, and I started connecting with the dots, with everything, and okay, now it makes sense. Now it makes sense, and it's just really. I said, I know this is true. I know this is true, and I'm applying. Because I know it's real. I do. I know it's real now. Now I know I can discern what's real and what's false. And if that discernment's really strong, I can let go of whatever's happening in the moment and just observe it, just witness it, because that's really all I've ever been. Even myself, I'm just a character. I'm just a character that I'm playing. And I was, so I said one book led to another, and I had all your books in at one time, and I started just that unwind your mind really got me. That really took me back to the, I started reading your teachings on tracing the mind back to levels of the mind. And yeah, it goes back to the desire, and when I could do that, you go back and see, okay, and I started teaching people in classes, the tattoos, the shaved head, the big, the steroids I used to do. I said, that's all a costume. It's a gimmick that I wear for you guys to believe. I said, and you all believed it was true. I said, A+ for acting, but I said, it's not who I am. That's who I overcompensated for feeling low, no self-esteem, no confidence, no, low self-worth. So the boxer was just a gimmick all these years, and I felt really good in that gimmick for a long time because it kept everyone out at my arm's reach. I didn't have to face myself until I went to prison, and I started seeing all these people were just versions of myself. I've been him at one time. I've been this guy one time, and there was no reason for me to really be upset with anyone because the crime that I held most dear to my heart that I knew I made the worst decision was what I had done. So people would say, "Why are you sticking up for him for?" He said, "Do you know what he's in here for?" I said, "Why are you talking to me?" I said, "Do you know what I'm in here for?" And it's, Yeah, but you're a good guy. I said, well, how do you know he can't be a good guy?
Yeah.
He made a mistake, you know. And I said, I made a mistake. And I said, you guys all think I'm great just because of the boxer. That's all anyone cared about. And I just started seeing the valuelessness of these constructs that we make, you know, and they're not who we are. They're just who I
Yeah.
made to be. That's all. That's just who I made to be accepted,
Yeah.
and everybody, you know, feel worthy enough.
Yeah. Maybe we can go back to that point. So you got into my books, you get into the course. Now you're really in it, you're really into healing really deep. You're getting deeper into it. But you want to give it away. So were you in Chillicothe at that time? Did you start just interacting with people that seem to be open? And is that some of the your cellmates, were those the first ones? Because I know uh, with prison, with Chillicothe, you weren't allowed to get like internet and things in, but were you able to get like movies in, or were you able to just do it starting with yourself and the connections? And how did that work in prison?
I remember because like when Jeffrey offered me the opportunity to do your movie class, I said, "There's no way they're going to do that in here. There's no way they're going to allow a facility to accept movies that being donated in here, and all these people could start visiting." I never thought it was going to be possible, but when we introduced it, all of a sudden opportunities doors started opening up, letters got written, people started answering calls, and they seen that this is working. They said, okay, the classes are working out in there, and maybe what he's teaching isn't bad, you know. And they started, so I had to take your book and the course to our unit manager, and he looked through it and he said, yeah, you know what, I like it, so go with that. And it took off, you know. And then when I later left that prison, and it really took off with Chris King and people there. Started there were multiple people coming there to sit through your movie program, and it was nice, you know. It was because you never would think that nothing like that would
Yeah,
happen, you know.
it's a
And
miracle.
it took
Groundbreaking.
off. It took off from me. The last prison I was at, South Central, Southeastern Correctional. JC had asked me about that. I said, "Listen, it's a little different here. They don't know who I am. They don't know anything about me. I don't think I can do this here." And the the chief, the unit manager chief, her name, she's next to the warden, was her name was Miss Good, Miss Good of all people. So
Jesus, put
and
your little sign in there.
Miss
Miss
Good, yeah.
Good.
She was the best. So like she looked through the material and she come to me and asked me. She said, "Hey, would you like to start being a facilitator here?" And I said, "Absolutely." I said, "What do you think about this?" And I showed her the book material, and she gave me a 24-hour notice. She said, "I'll get back to you." Absolutely. She gave a thumbs up the next day, and she said, "Let's do it." So it was you know, everywhere we were going, it was starting to catch on, and people were open to it. It was starting to change. I would have never imagined 20 years ago that the prisons would be open to this stuff, you know. And then like, but as I started to change, so did my environment. So it was weird. It wasn't weird. It was just it was nice to see, you know. It was nice to
Yeah,
see it's coming from how I see it,
yeah.
you know.
But it's just you, the way that you can use your story, the way that you see people, the way that you would see other prisoners after you've gone through these healings, and then just open up your heart to them. That is such a witness and a demonstration. And, the form is different for everyone, but I don't know. I can kind of see you coming out west with JC and us out there west, and isn't your son out there? I don't know. You might end up being like a minister or something,
I
uh,
love it.
where, it would be the last thing you ever imagined, probably in your life. But I could see you being a minister and sharing this because, even ministers, they can't really preach from the pulpit until they've gone through an experience and until they feel an activation or a connection. And you've got that, that's the most important thing in extending love and extending ideas of forgiveness and seeing the innocence of everyone. And I mean, you've been prepared in the most amazing way. It's kind of a extreme and dramatic story, but then, and you married your childhood crush. My gosh, this isn't the story that ends all stories, you know. I mean, even Hurricane
Yeah.
Carter doesn't have all this in it, you know. It's got a lot of things, but this is really amazing.
Well, the thing about that was is when reaching back to Dina was, which I never felt good enough for. So when I did that and I opened up to her, I said, "Listen, I wanted to be totally open to her. I want to remove the mask." And I dropped all the mask in that letter. I wrote her everything I've ever felt for her and everything I said, listen, you're going to read a lot of bad things about me. And I'm just going to tell you now, just they're true. So I said, and I told her, I said, they're true. I said, I can't refute it because the internet, it's just everywhere. So, but amazingly, she responded and she's told me several times, she said, I'll only take that person. She said, I want your true self with no mask. She doesn't want an image there. She doesn't want the self image. And I've never in my life been accepted like that. So
Wow.
I've never felt like I would be accepted like that. So it's special to me, No one's ever nobody, and that's what was so cathartic with writing you, Dave, because I knew every time I write, you see me. You don't see the boxer. You don't see my past. And
Yeah,
so that felt really nice, and
yeah,
it's I needed that to open up because
yeah. Well,
I can never.
Dina's a big part of this too, because when you were just observing her when she was 12, and then she, was told that you were there for what to watch her, to see her, then you said, no fear, she comes right over to me, and you took off running. And
I
so
left before.
yeah, that's fantastic though, but I would open the movie with that scene. And then from then on, it's a wild ride, but in the end you get married to her and she's there saying no mask, I just want to love you who you are, and if you want to be with me, you can't wear a mask.
She
Wow,
said you.
that's the spirit.
She said if you want to be with me, you can't. There's no room for your past. She said I don't want
Oh
that here.
wow,
And
that's
I said,
amazing.
and that really helped me out because I don't have to talk about my past with her. I don't have to be anything but just this little kid that I used to be, feel like, and I could just, I could just open up, and that's why I really resonated with the kid because I thought that was a symbol for it for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I remember that movie with Bruce Willis, and I remember how it kind of led them back to a situation where the kid was bullied. And but in that movie, he had to really come with all his strength and courage to stand up to the bullies, but he ended up throwing some punches. With you, your story is even beyond that. It's because here comes the one that bullied you, and you got to have that interaction, and it was it was like a healing for the whole universe with you and then when he was released, you did all that to help him, ease into the world when he came out and everything. That's like it's more than standing up. That's actually having the all those memories reinterpreted in a new way. And you did that with Dina too, everything got reinterpreted. And I think that's what the message of healing really is we have to let everything be reinterpreted in our mind. And you're a living example of that.
I appreciate that, David. I do. It's really just been a continual journey with that. Like I said, it's since I've been out, I've had my challenges and stuff, and that version of myself wants to come back real bad, and
Mhm.
I have to keep no, 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 and and I tell Dina everything. I tell her what's on my mind. So we're that's one of our things, being transparent with each other. So, and I tell her what's on my mind. So it's often it sounds like wow, he's thinking that, I don't know, but it's just there's constant, like she pointed out yesterday, there was a situation, she said it's just a test, it's just a test, and it's constantly testing me. Is he there still? Is that old me still there? And I got to keep on denying it because it drives me crazy. It does. It drives me nuts. I can't. That voice in the head. I don't want to. I don't ever want to go back to that again. I think that was an extreme enough example of doing all that time and what I did. to let go of that character, let go of that version, because it's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I have often felt that the context of prison is actually very helpful from a spiritual perspective because you have sometimes a lot of time on your hand and it doesn't it's more of a cut down, trimmed down version of the world because you don't have so many extreme distractions. It's really all just thoughts in the mind, but it's almost like the spirit giving you like an advantage, saying, here, you're in a position now where you can start to look within and heal. Whereas many people in the world, they just seem to be so caught up into bigger, better, faster, more, achieve, accomplish, and and it's so much future oriented. Whereas when you've got time on your hands, whether you're in prison or solitary confinement or whatever it is, I see that that's why Jesus says you can't judge your advances from your retreats. And I feel like maybe that's something that you feel too, that you feel it was everything was just right for you to go through this deep inner healing. Whereas a lot of people they got 10 plates twirling and they don't even allow their mind to question what they believe or what they think. They just are caught up in the rat race.
It is a lot of it, like I said, a lot of it for me is just was realizing who is it that wants all this attention right now? Who is it that's because there's a constant, it's an addiction, it's I would go to NAAA groups and I would get up and I would say, listen, I said, I understand it's a struggle with the alcohol and with the drugs. But if I'm being honest, I said the biggest addiction for me is just this personality, trying to be this person that I never really am, that I never was. And I was fortunate enough to where I could trace it back to tattoos on sleeves. Like I could see what made this construct. I could see what made this personality, and it was through my dad and all that, those experiences that I seen. It was all there's the lava phase. Like I had to see that I want to be liked, accepted, validated, or approved of. And that's when I see that it just melts my costume off.
Yeah,
It melts it off because it's constantly that. I mean, no matter what I do, it's designed to win other people's approval. It's
yeah, yeah,
always that. It's always
yeah.
designed for that.
Yeah, there's something to be said for humbleness. And I sense through it all, when I see you talk about Dina, your eyes just sparkle, your smile beams from side to side. And she's just into humbleness. She wants just a humble you without a past. And I recently somebody sent me a message, a video of Scotty Scheffler. I think he's the number one golf player in the world. He just won the British Open, a Masters. He's won. He's by far the top rated golfer in the world. And then when he gets into the press conference, he's like, you know, I don't really care about golf, and I don't care about winning matches. And he said, you win one and then you go home and it's like, okay, that's not where my value comes in. He's ranked number one in the world and he's worth millions of dollars, but he could care less. And then they asked him, well, if you don't live for golf, then what do you live for? And he said, family, friends, connections. That's what's important. He said, this stuff is not important. Chasing a white ball around and hitting it towards the cup, but it was so refreshing to hear the number one golf player in the world completely talk in a press conference for 10 minutes about, no, I don't really care. I don't care at all about these tournaments, and I don't really care about winning tournaments. And that was just this humbleness was coming through. And I think with everything you've gone through, that's probably the thing that is coming through you. And it's also probably the only, like you said, the temptation of the old you that wants to come back, that you face on a daily basis, that the pride that wants to come in there.
The pride with wanting to, because when you've been something before, you feel like you always, once you've had a taste of that attention, you're going to constantly get that high again. You want to constantly go back for it, and it never comes. So the big thing for me was, and I would ask the guys in prison, I'd say, if you got out tomorrow and you just can't get a job, and now I'm facing it, you just can't get a job. So where you just can't get a job, I said, what if the only job you could get was, a cashier at McDonald's? What if that's the only thing? And but you were used to being, something when you were out before in your other life. What if that was the only thing you could do? Would you do it, or would you? And I say, and then all of a sudden your buddy comes through the drive-through and you see him in his Escalade, and he's got all this money and stuff, and he tempts you to come with him, take a ride with him real quick, and he can get you right. How many people are going to say no? And people would start to raise their hand, and they're like, yeah. I said, no, really. I said, you got to put yourself in that situation. I said, because it might come to one day to where that's all I could be is a McDonald's cashier, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not what my concept said was okay back in the day,
Yeah,
20 years
yeah,
ago. And
yeah,
now as a 50-year-old man, I'm looking at it like, you know what? It doesn't seem so bad now. I can, as long as I get a job, I'm winning.
yeah,
I just need something.
yeah,
So you let go of the preferences, and
yeah,
that was the big thing. The
yeah.
preferences for
In the course in Miracles, Jesus, in his development of trust section back in the manual for teachers, he says you're going to go through 6 stages, and the final stage is the stage of achievement, whatever you want to call it, tranquility, peace, enlightenment, whatever. But the first stage, he says, it will seem as if things are being taken away from you. And he says that's not actually what's happening. It's just that you're starting to devalue them in your mind. So if you look at your life, that's to be a professional boxer, to be on ESPN, like you said, you found out it wasn't so much the boxing that you liked, but it was the attention that was the big thing. And so the boxing career went away. Then you're in prison. A lot of people would say, well, that's a big part of your life. When you're in prison, they would say, you've had a huge chunk of your potential life in the world taken away. And yet, it's almost like you just, without even knowing it, you jumped into that first stage of Jesus. And then he got you. Whatever your life was going to be, in football analogy, he intercepted. And now he's going for a pick six. He's going for the touchdown, running with your life. So the life
I,
of Dale, the boxer on ESPN, was intercepted. And then you end up in prison. And then you're going through this huge catharsis of forgiveness and healing. And I think you're just moving through those stages of developing your trust to be humble, to just be as God created you, not to have all the extra stuff, all the narcissism and all the false pursuits and false pride. I just feel like this is a great healing story. And I feel like it's a story that just can come through so naturally, like it is.
appreciate. Oh man, it's hard to put piece together, but it's like you say the things that they're taken away from me. Like for me, it's principles, ego principles. Like my pride's getting taken away, my guilt, my shame, all the things that defined Dale Crow is being taken away, and that hurts. Sometimes it hurts, but the realization that it's only burning away what was never real to begin with comes in, and it's like, okay, let it burn and let it burn. And for me, that's freeing because bring it. So there's
You're
there's
welcome
like
again.
let it burn, let it
Take
burn.
all of
I,
Dale. Go ahead. Take it
I
all.
want to take all this pain away from me because I don't want it anymore. I don't want it. I'm handing the ball off, and they can have
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
It was sickening when I started doing these classes, and I would see the traits of a narcissist or the traits of, and it was all dead on who I used to be, who I believed I used to be. So I was like, wow, it just sickened me. It really did sicken me. And I said, but it also describes the ego. It describes and I was heavily into that. It was all about me, and people would come through prison. They would say, well, this isn't who I used to know, and good. I wouldn't bat an eye at it. I said, good. I'm glad that you see that, because I don't want to be that anymore. And I think that's just the fear of everybody. Is like, well, who am I? It comes down to that fear. Who am I if I'm not this? Who I told
Yeah.
everybody I was,
Yeah.
and that's the big fear. It's like, can we be that without the? Can we strip it all off and just be our naked self? How many people can do that? I mean, I can't. I still can't do it. It's hard to do, but I do recognize that that's what's necessary.
Yeah.
I do recognize that's what's necessary, and I struggle with it daily. Like I said, I get as soon as I think I got something, I get smacked back to reality. I'm getting hit. I'm getting hit. And, I think I made a step forward, and I get three steps back. But it's it's humbling. It is because it's uh I forgot I lost what I was going to say. It's just because the people that you're around every day, they're going to remind you of who you were. They remind you of who you used to be, and they're going to want to do that because they want to be who they were. So it's really just coming from my mind fighting me. No, you're not going anywhere. You're
Yeah.
going to stay here. They're just telling me what I need to hear to stay at Dale Crow, and I don't
Yeah,
want to be that.
even that though, I see how you are guided. You really are guided because when you were going to get out of prison, maybe one of your offers was to get out there up in Ohio, uh, that's where I've had my peace house all these years in Cincinnati since 1996. But you knew that you needed to go down there and be with Dina. And you knew that was guidance. You needed to get away from the old past associations and really give yourself a chance to be guided with a fresh start. And I think
It
that's
was
important.
it was what came to my awareness, and I told her that. I said I couldn't get you out of my mind. I said after Keith left and went home, I said you wouldn't leave my mind, so I had to contact her because I
Yeah.
believe that's. And it just so happened to be she lives in Florida, and it took me away from Ohio
Yeah.
to where I could come somewhere
Yeah.
and start over.
That's it. That's it.
And I struggle right now with the my parole officer were trying to leave. You wanted me to come out there to Utah a few weeks back, and I couldn't come because it's really hard for me to leave the state. And so I was having trouble with that. My dad's not doing well right now, health wise, and I went in to go see her and talk to her about possibly going back to Cincinnati for a weekend trip to see my dad. And she made it out like it was impossible to do. I had to go through the courts, and it's going to be a long time before I ever get an answer I want. And so I went down there to face that, and it just so happened that day she wasn't in, and they let me talk to her supervisor. And I talked to him. He said, "What?" He said, "You all you have to do is just file with us that you want to leave town, that you want to leave the state." And he said, "Cincinnati will either approve it or not." He said, "You're Ohio's property, but we're babysitting you." So it was a miracle in itself that I went down there, and he tells me this. He said, "You can leave anytime that you want." He said, "You can put in a request." He said, "And I can't guarantee it's always going to be answered," but he said, it's that simple. Come down here and fill out the paperwork, so I can come out there.
All
I just
right.
have to. I just have to put in the notice. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it has to be given enough time. But that was nice to hear though that
Yeah.
it is possible to leave the state of Florida.
Yeah, it's great too that that's how the spirit works with us step by step. Like you're down there. I remember the first time I talked to you when you were in Florida, I said, "Yeah, I haven't even met my parole officer yet, but I'm supposed to meet her pretty soon." And she was interested, of course, in how you doing, how you adapting, what kind of people are you hanging out with, and then you're starting to be able to talk to her and say, "Here's where I feel connected. These are the people. Here we are in a Zoom room with people who adore you, absolutely adore you, and these are the kind
uh,
of witnesses that the Spirit calls forth." And it's part of like a new direction. And I do feel like that you're even when you discovered that you could actually leave if you got permission, that little by little, step by step, it's just been so new that you got released. But it's like you can see already the doors are just opening.
it is. People are starting to answer the phone now, and their letters are getting written back to me, and the Zoom call. I mean, I never imagined sitting in there when I wrote you that letter that I'd be on a Zoom call with the big guy. I was like, wow. I said, wow. I could never imagine that would happen because I'm writing this course teacher, and I'm like, he's not going to answer me, you know. And when I started getting all that mail, wow, that was an emotional time because it was like, wow, never, what a Christmas gift, you know. That was
Yeah.
huge. And
Yeah,
now I
you
feel so
call me the
connected.
big guy and you're the big guy, and we're just two big guys. We're just two wild and crazy guys, like a Saturday Night Live. We're two guys from Cincinnati that are healing and loving it.
Yeah, I started reading that in your books and stuff that you're from Cincinnati, Ohio. You were mentioning Coney Island and things, places like that. And I said, wow. So what's the chances that this guy's from Cincinnati, you know? And it's just crazy. You know, I enjoyed it though.
Yeah. Well, I
I'm
think
t-
us being here right now and talking the way we're talking, it's similar to that time years ago when I took your red letter, handwritten letter, and I went on this show, Escape to Happiness, and then I think at the end I was like, yeah, if you want to contact Dale, we'll make his his address available, and then all of a sudden people watch that from all over the country and they start sending you letters. They said, "Oh, I'm not only sending Dale letters, I'm sending envelopes with stamps on
oh yeah.
Dale so that Dale can write back to me." And it was just a miracle. It was an explosion of like opening up to love. And I was just doing my thing, and you started doing your thing because they started writing you and sending you envelopes with stamps on.
It was amazing. It really was, David. I was man, I had something I was gonna say. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. But hmm, I had something to add in there, but I can't remember what it was now.
Yeah, it's just the spirit doing it through us for sure.
Might come back. I don't know. It might come. It might
Yeah.
come back.
I think that's just a good example of how the doors open. People were so touched. I was sharing on that show about you and your letter. I was crying. The studio audience, what was around me filming, was crying. It went out on the internet, on YouTube, whatever. People were crying. And I think anything that really touches us that deeply in our heart, that's so precious because then our heart is cracking open and it's for the good of everyone. And so I just feel the Spirit orchestrated that, just like even now, I think JC was going to do it and he had a little something in his throat. And so Deborah said, "What about David?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll come on there with Dale. Two big guys from Cincinnati. Who can resist that?"
I love it. I love it. I love. You know what? That's what it was, David. I was applying it so deeply in the prison that I was having the experiences that everything that the course points to. I was having those experiences, and I've been trying to. I got it, and it's like all of a sudden I had it, and then I got ripped back into this reality of the ego. And even in prison, I did. The last 2 years, I was so solely focused on going home to Dina. So, but all my old beliefs started coming back, and she would check me on them. She's like, that's not who I told you that I was interested in." And I got to let it go, let it go. So it's like I've been trying to get back there for these years since 2018, and then recently here, the miracle started opening up. Jason Warwick called with Deborah and invited me on the thing coming up in August, the 15th. So I
Mystical
was like,
Christ Academy, yeah.
I said, wow. I said, when's this coming in? And I said, and then me and you talked, and I'm walking on I'm walking or doing some exercise around the block, and I think I butt dialed David, and he called me back, and it's FaceTime, and so I'm walking with David while I'm doing a walk, and I said, wow, this is crazy. Just the miracle started opening up, and so I get back to that ledge again, and that's the only thing keeping me is I got to leap, I got to jump. So yeah, I told you I make acronyms up for everything, so it's got to be leap, is leave everything at peace. And if I jump, in course terms, it's Jesus understands my problem. I'm stuck in this duality, and I just got to make the jump into awareness. It's hard to accept the atonement all the time when you're stuck on yesterday.
Yeah.
It's just the present. The presence is the only thing that can the acronym for release and purpose. It's RIP.
Yeah.
RIP. Rest, rest in presence. Well, that's it.
Rest in
So
presence.
if I rest in presence, that's the only way that I'm going to be free. And
Yeah.
I can't do it if I'm still clinging on to yesterday. So
Yeah.
the miracles
Yeah.
just keep coming as long as I can stay in the presence.
Yeah.
That's where it's at.
Well, what's so beautiful too is with this platform we're on now, Tribe of Christ, there's news shows coming up this week. Natalie and Nicholas is starting a new show. I just saw yesterday, we had a show called Modern Mystics, and they're back. Nicholas and Andy are coming back. So this is just the first episode of basically the escape that comes from releasing the ego in your mind. And I know Jeffrey Kosker will be on with you. And so I think that's the thing. I mean, years ago we started doing live broadcasting, and we put on a lot of shows, and we hadn't done so much for a while. But now, with Deborah, Jason calling you, say, hey, yeah, there's Mystical Christ Academy starting in mid-August. We'd love you to be a part of it. I had said I would love to go on Mystical Christ Academy with Dale. We can we can do some shows together on there. And then this Tribe of Christ, I think basically it's even every week a new show with you, and it lets more of the love pour through, more of the innocence pour through all the time. And it's always purposeful because everyone is going through the same struggle. Everybody's going through the same thing.
It's the same struggle. And I would have the backlash all the time from the class, and they would say, well, not everybody was a pro boxer, and I said, it's not about pro boxing. You could be anything, a lawyer, a doctor, a basketball player, whatever it is that you're trying, the concept you're holding on to. I said, you have to clearly see, who am I if I'm not that concept? And what are you doing this for? What is it for? Everything for me has been designed for your approval. That's everybody's approval. I need to be noticed. I need to be recognized. I need to be adorated. And that's when I saw that in my last 2 years in prison was I was sitting in the hole. I was sitting in the hole for I got kicked out of Chillicothe, which I thought was devastating at the time because I had so many good things going on with the classes and the groups going on. And I sat in that hole, and I got what they did was they transferred me away because they said I was establishing a relationship with my dog handlers, my dog's trainer or my dog's owner. I'm sorry. I was a dog trainer, and I love this dog. This dog was like my everything. Every day I would take care of this dog, and she would leave him with me for weeks at a time. Sometimes, go on vacations, and she knew that this dog didn't like anybody. He wouldn't. He was antisocial, but for whatever reason, he took to me. He was a loner. He took to me, and he's a Belgian Malinois. And those police dogs, and the dog was just beautiful. His name was Kane, and I mean, we spent so much time together. So when they took me away, naturally I got close to the owner, and because I'm the dog trainer, I'm watching her baby,
Yeah, yeah.
and she, so they felt we were a little too personable, and so they shipped me out of there out of fear of what could happen in prison, So I was like, man, why did I do this? I was writing her emails and stuff about her dog. I said, I need to see my son for the weekend, and things like that. It was just I was just being my goofy self,
Yeah, yeah.
and I didn't, but I knew that the warden and the major and all the other case managers were reading these emails that I would send her. And I knew it. And the only reason I'm doing it is because I wanted to be liked, accepted, validated, and approved of.
Ah,
I wanted their attention. I wanted them to know, hey, it's just, get a laugh out of them because I like feeling comfortable in my environment. So I realized that in the whole. And then I also, if I wouldn't have got transferred, there's no Dina, there's no Keith Wright, there's no
yeah,
recognition
yeah.
of
That
what
was the
happened.
next part of the story.
That was everything. So once I got that, I said, wow, this really was orchestrated. Like it really happened. Everything happens for the greater good because it seemed devastating when it happened. But then when I let go and started doing what I'm supposed to do at Southeastern Correctional, it was perfect. It
Yeah,
actually worked out great.
yeah.
you know, Chris King wouldn't have took off the way he did at Chillicothe, or maybe he would have, but he really took off at Chillicothe with the course, and all those people started coming to his classes and everything. So it really ignited something big at Chillicothe when I left. So
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
I was happy to see that.
yeah. Well, you know what? I think too, you've been used by the Spirit in this. Well, I'll just say it's been a prison ministry. And even with A Course in Miracles, not a lot of people know, but the original ones that were brought the course in. The last one just passed away. His name was Bob Scutch, and he was up in his 90s, I think. But he was into prison ministry with A Course in Miracles way back decades ago, and he was taking it back when Alcatraz is still an active prison. He goes back
Wow.
that far. So I was aware of that. And I think, with Jeffrey Kosker, JC, he's got Last Step Ministry. But when I talked to Frank, I talked to JC and everything, a lot of it started to really spark there at Chillicothe and with you. You were kind of like you have to baseball and Major League Baseball, we have to roll it all the way back to the 19 teens and 20s. Babe Ruth. You were like the Babe Ruth. You were in
Nah, so
Chillicothe. You were hitting those long, high towering shots out of there. And I'm going, what? He's showing movies in Chillicothe to the prisoners. I mean, whoa, we got Babe Ruth in there. He's thundering them balls over the wall because now Last Step Ministry, it's expanded, it's grown. And like you said, after you left Chillicothe, then they took on, they kept going with it. And I think it was not too long ago where they started getting my teachings. We were taking our MMT, mystical mind training. We were cutting it down, editing it, getting it into the prisons, getting audios into the prisons. Now they've been allowed to get my videos in all the prisons in the United States. So what you were reading my books, now the prisoners in all the different states in the United States, the prisons are going to be getting a platform inside the prison that can watch the videos. And
really.
so Last Step Ministry is going. You were like Babe Ruth, yeah, you hit 60 home runs, and most people are hitting 20 and 30, but that kind of inspired people, and it helped the whole ministry grow. Now there's Christy and Paul, there's Amanda and Micah, there's a whole group of people that are really working with that. Our friend Fabi, he's been editing videos and helping them get up. So we're part of a Course in Miracles prison ministry that now has gone into all the prisons of the United States. And you were a
Wow.
part of it. You were like one of the leads there. You were just cranking those home runs in there back in Chillicothe, not knowing what you were doing. You were just extending your love. But now it's taken off. And I can't think of a better place to have the deep teachings go in than into the prison system because prisoners want to be happy. They want to heal. They want to forgive. They want to let go of the past.
Those Adobo videos that you put together, David, that you guys are showing in the prisons. Those were powerful. Those were really taking off in Southeast, well, at least in Southeastern Correction, they were. I know people were loving those. So you really get a lot from the course in those videos you just watch. And I stay on them every morning. I watch them. So not now.
I
I'm
know.
watching David.
I know. Jeffrey keeps passing me little messages. Tell the big guy hi. Tell the big guy thanks. But really, you were in prison. You were the big guy. Babe Ruth was big too. He was a big guy. He was cranking him out there when the rest were getting like 10, 12 home runs. He's like 60. It's my gosh, everybody was like, Babe Ruth, my gosh. But it has to start. We have to take our calling, our healing, and you weren't doing it for attention. You were doing it because it was healing. You were giving it away.
at at a certain point, it started feeling cathartic, and I started feeling the healing go through. And I said, "Wow, I need more of this. I need more. What else can I do?" So, and that's what happened was the classes, the facilitations, the mentoring, and then just meeting with people like Keith Wright was because I would see multiple people that I once knew on the street and they're come through and they're all versions of who I was, who I used to be. And I'd have to forgive them at some point because I don't want to be that anymore. And when they would come through and we would meet and connect, I said, wow, okay, I can feel I would apply the course principles and you can just feel the release. And it's like, wow, okay. So, and I would spread that to other people and tell them about, look, this week I met so and so, and this is what happened back in the day, and this is why I forgave them today. And people that in the prison terms they call them a snitch. People that turned me in, as a all those people started coming to visit me in prison, and I would just hug them and thank them, and I love them because there's not this isn't here if that doesn't happen. If
Yeah,
they don't do exactly what they did to me, or what I thought they did to me, this doesn't happen for me. And
yeah, yeah.
this is really an opening for me. So
Yeah, that's it. And I love how you told a little bit of your story in Cincinnati. And I was just a boy growing up in Cincinnati. And when I was little, when I was like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, my father was an usher, and he would take me down to Crosley Field before the days of Riverfront Stadium. Crosley Field, he would take me down in there, and in it would be in the 60s, and I'd watch players, Frank Robinson, Pete Rose. Frank Robinson, boom, hits a home run over the left field high wall at Crosley Field. My dad goes out, he gets the ball, and after the game, he goes, Dave, here's Frank Robinson's home run. He just hammered
wow.
like a 400-foot home run. My dad, as an usher, goes out, gets it, and I take it. He wants me to put it in a little plastic case, get an
Right.
autograph from Frank Robinson. I want to play baseball, so I get the kids in my neighborhood and I say, "Hey, I got a ball." My
Right.
dad's like, "Oh my God." So we would go out and we would play it until we lost it or hit it in a lake or something, and I'd say, "Oh, I lost the ball, Dad." He said, "That was Frank Robinson's home run." But I grew up watching Pete Rose, and I have to say, I was like watching him in the 60s and then in the 70s, Big Red Machine, and World Series and all that. But I was watching and I would say, how come when it's ball four, people always walk to first on a walk? And they said, David, it's called a walk because you get a free base, ball four. But I said, but there's this guy out there and he runs to first base. And I'm like, I like that. He wants it so bad that he gets ball four. He runs to first base. Then when he goes to second base, he doesn't just slide feet first. He dives in head first. He goes sliding it dirt all over him. I'm like, look at the drive in that guy. Look at the willingness. That is inspiring me. And so it turns out I watched him in the 60s. He's hitting base hits, base hits. He keeps hitting base hits for so many years that finally I find myself at Riverfront Stadium one day with 50 some thousand people. And the record for the most hits in Major League Baseball was held by Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb. Until
Wow.
here comes Pete Rose to bat and 4191 4,191 hits. My address that I live in, the house,
What?
he cranks out 4191, he cranks out the most hits in Major League Baseball, and to this day, it's still there.
Still
No,
the record today?
Babe
Wow.
Ruth, not Hank Aaron, not Rod Carew, or all the famous hitters throughout baseball. He's got the most hits of anyone else. Now, it doesn't matter with the hits. He was nicknamed Charlie Hustle because he never gave up. He would run out a walk. He would dive head first. He would do whatever it takes. And I took that inside, like Jesus saying to me, see that guy out there? You've got to have the dedication, the devotion, the drive of Pete Rose, except you have to apply it to forgiveness. So this is what I grew up. Jesus takes our heroes, which for their desire, their drive, their passion. He had such passion. That's why he ended up with so many hits, the most in Major League Baseball, because he kept the passion up for years, 20 some years. He just kept the passion never went away. And he just passed away recently. He went to visit his buddies Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, Tony Perez had like a baseball convention. And then after he was there, they were reminiscing about old times and all the great times. He passed away a week later. And
Oh,
and to me, there it is again, how we just call forth witnesses in this world to what's in our heart. So there's a lot of people that are going to hear you and they'll look up to what you went through. And like I looked up to Pete Rose, growing up in Cincinnati, my dad, in fact, my dad was knew some of our relatives. They said we're going to have Pete Rose become our godfather. Sometimes you have godmothers, godfathers. So he was in our family. He was the godfather of one of the children because he just had so much passion, and to me that's what I took from it. It's like I have to live my life with that same passion. And you did it too in Chillicothe. You got it going, then you went off to your next place, where you made your contacts for where you are now, and it just keeps going that way.
and that's what it is. Just staying back on, getting back to where my dog's barking. So, I, but that's really what keeps me peace is staying on this path, the course. And it'd be easy to stray away from it with all the distractions out there, but that's where I get lost at, and I feel that pull going back to the old me. I said, no, 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 no. So I need to come back to this, to where my peace is at, because and talking about it, even, it's I get that feeling back again, and there was a course lady that her name's Karen Parente, and she sent me yours is Pete Rose, mine's Rocky. So she said
Rocky
she sent
Balboa.
me he sent me a Rocky statement. He said, "It's not how hard you can hit; it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." And I
Yeah,
said, "That's what it is." I said, "I just need to keep moving forward, because I get hit
yeah,
with the obstacles in life. I just keep moving forward.
yeah,
I
yeah,
keep forgiving, keep forgiving, keep forgiving, because I put it there, And this is all reverberations from my old self that I'm forgiving constantly. So it's how I see it anyway. Yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah.
you know,
That's that's
it's
good.
staying rooted in this is where I
Yeah,
need to stay. I
yeah,
love it.
yeah. Well,
You
I
know,
know this is only the first episode, but I know this would be a big thrill. So maybe, Deborah, can you ask anybody if anybody wants to say or share anything to us and to Dale? Just ask them to raise their digital hand, and let's take a few or several people, so we can have some live interactions here, and then uh, that will be our conclusion of episode
all
one. Tune in again for episode two, coming next week with Jeffrey Kosker. So, okay, Deborah, take it away.
Yeah, sure. I see Bridget there.
hi,
Hi.
how is
That,
everyone?
that was so moving. I could really relate, obviously not in prison, but in the prison of my own mind, of course. But I can relate to uh, it moves me to tears, to the addiction of love and approval. It's really fierce.
Sure.
It's truly an addiction. And I think that for me, I could see that the relief finally came when when I really saw that it wasn't me who did all those things and who would seek for the love and approval, that truly is the ego. But as the ego, I couldn't see it. It was like the ego trying to see that I wasn't what I was. And
Right.
so I think what really something shifted in me when I started just, it's like what it reminds you of is you're a boxer. And so like your skills of bobbing and weaving, it's like all those images and appearances that are coming at you. It's like you have to like, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. It's kind of like that.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And because that's what it reminds me that I have been just recently doing. And it's the noticing of all these images and then really, really turning to spirit and saying, I know I'm being deceived. Can you please restore this mind back to sanity, to the mind that's whole? that is not, because the mind that's in, that self can't get out of self, the bondage of self, let's say in the 12 steps, it can't get out from underneath it. But the only way out for me, really, truly recently, was the figuring out that every single time some image came up that I had to bob and weave, give it immediately to spirit, because only spirit can light into the mind that is dreaming, that it's not dreaming, that it's, you were never that. And so that's where the innocence have come for me. And I so appreciate all these. It just, I'm so with you on this. So thank you. Really, really
And
powerful.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
Thank you, Bridget. Now we can go with Mary Strupp.
Hi, Mary.
There you go. We heard, had it there for a moment. There we go.
I got two messages. Oh my gosh, I just thought from the very beginning, I was like, oh, I just hope I get a chance because I was on the original retreat when David shared your letter, and all of us were joined in this. I don't know, it was something magical, but he kept, he would, David was reading this letter and then talking about it, and he was talking about it. It's written in a red crayon. He doesn't even have a typewriter. It's written in a red crayon. And I was just like, how humbling this is. This man is in prison and he's getting this. There's no excuse for me. There's just no, it's like, because I was pretty new. It was new to me, but I absolutely loved it. And I was kind of obsessed. All my friends were writing you, and I was like, it doesn't feel guided to write because he's having to write all these letters to people, and so I never did. But I picked up everything I could find out about Dale Crow because I was so intrigued by your journey. And I read your book. I think it was called The Bully Within.
Bully Within, yeah.
Yeah. And there was this and then I had my husband read it, and it touched him too. But there was a part in there where you shared about an experience with a guard where you were
Yeah.
ready to let everything go again, and but because you had been, I think it was humiliated,
Yeah.
and you, it's like nobody could do that to you, and it was like everything was gone. You didn't care how well you'd been doing. You're going to kill this guy, and I think you even constructed a weapon. I don't remember, but what it came to me, what it was so powerful to me, that story. I still remember it because it was like a moment of awakening, because it's like Holy Spirit just kind of came and took all that away from you in the middle of a horrible dark night of the soul where you knew. I don't know. Is there any way you could describe that situation, or would you rather do that on a later uh, podcast? Because I don't want to hog it, but I just love that story so much.
I appreciate it. What I didn't put in there was there was a healing moment with the guard, and I woke up the next morning feeling how I did with it was a release in my emotions. I was upset. I was crying, and I hugged my cellie and apologized to him because I threw him out the day before the cell, and we had a falling out. So I was apologizing to a lot of people, and I said, I'm going back to that guard, and I'm going to apologize. And they said, no, 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 don't. Everybody said, don't go down there. He's going to put you in the hole. And I said, I have to go back down there because what was on my heart the day before. I said, I have to tell this guy what's going on. And so I went down there, and I go down there, and he's leaning on the wall as I walked in the store. And I said, sir, I'm not here to bother you. I said, I'm just here to, he said, you're not going to shop today. He said, you're not going to the store, because he took my store day from me and I needed food. I said, I'm not here to ask for food. I said, I'm just here to say I'm sorry about yesterday. I said, I was out of line. I disrespected your rules. And I said, I wanted to say I was sorry. And he said, is that it? I said, yes, sir. And he said, bye. And I said, okay. So I turned around and walked out, and I got about halfway down the road, and he come out and yelled for me. And I go back, and I said, am I in trouble? He said, you really came down here just to say that? And I said, sir, I said, you don't understand what was on my heart the day before. I said, we don't have to go into details or anything. I said, but I was in a bad way over you yesterday. And he said, sometimes it's not about you, Crow. It's not all about you, Crow. He said, you're a good guy. He said, sometimes us guards are going through things that are at home. And maybe I took that out on you yesterday. He said he was going through a nasty divorce with his wife. And I didn't know that. He said, maybe I took that out on you and I want to apologize. He said, I appreciate the apology. And he stuck his hand out to me and he shook my hand, which he never does. And, you're not supposed to do that. I said, wow, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. He said, you still want to shop? I said, yeah, I got no food in my box. I would love to shop. He said, come back this afternoon and I'll take care of you. So for me, that was like, that opened up the floodgates. I was like, wow, okay. I said, this is real. What I'm dealing with is real here. So I'm staying on the path. So, and I never looked back. I never looked back. I kept going and going and going. That was probably my first experience. So it's like around 2009. I just started getting into the courts and this police. And I was like, wow, I didn't understand a word of it when I first started it. But I was like, well, this stuff's real. This is really happening. This is the healing is coming forward. So it was a big thing for me. I didn't construct a weapon. My job was picking up trash on the yard. I found a piece of broken, twisted rebar. It was a twisted piece of
That's what it
metal.
was. Yeah.
It was on the ground. And I said, my ego says, this is a sign from God. I'm supposed to do this. So I grabbed it and I shoved it in the ground and I pulled a trash can over it and I said, I'll come back in the morning and grab it and I'll finish the job in the morning. And I was dead set on it. And the thing is that I had been down long enough to where I was used to getting a lot of mail and people were falling off. I was losing attention. I wasn't getting the recognition that I was used to. And that was eating me alive. Everyone was forgetting about me. And so in my sick mind at the time, I said, if I do this tomorrow morning, I'll get a 48-hour special, maybe Dateline. Maybe they'll come in here and I'll be Dale
Yeah.
Crow again, and I'll get all the attention again. And that's all I cared about. I knew I am thinking I'm going to take myself away from my son for the rest of my life. And at the time, the attention was worth it. I said, and it's sad to say that, but that's how sick it is. That's the addiction, and that's all I wanted was a little recognition. And I'll be a legend in there. I said, if I do this, I'll be a legend. People for years will talk about this. And they wouldn't have, it was a sick thought. And I'm glad that my experience happened the way it did, because I wouldn't be sitting here today. So
Yeah. Wow. I think that was a huge awakening experience for you. And it certainly was for me. But I'm just excited that it's like full circle now. That was 2018 and here it is 2025. And I'm like, he's going to be on the Mystical Christ Academy. I'm like so excited about that. So, David is my hero. And I
the
say
big guy.
hero, David. I know you big guys, y'all I'm just excited about it because, this is my path is going mystical. And here we got two mystics that are just totally honest about what their life, what's really going through the mind. And yeah, it's helping so much. And I'm just feeling grateful. It feels like a miracle to me just for you to be here with us. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Mary.
I just watched the Saturday Night Live, uh, two wild and crazy guys, Steve Martin and Dan Aykroyd, and I think we're just two healing guys from Cincinnati. Sometimes wild and crazy, but we're in for the healing.
I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah. And Hope, I see Hope out there with the big blue sky behind
I
her.
hope.
She's out there soaring through the clouds.
Hey,
I
hey,
hope.
Gail. Hi, David.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm in Starbucks, so I'm just going to say what I have to say real quick and get out because I have free Wi-Fi here. So I just want to thank you and tell you how much I love you, and I followed you for a long time. And Karen Parente is a close friend of mine. She will be
She's the
so
best.
thrilled that you mentioned her. And if there's any way, because she's not on Tribe, if there's any way that I can get this recording and give it to her, it will be the high point of her life.
Oh, you guys, she's the best. Yeah, do that. Say hello for me too.
I will. I will. Thank you. I love you.
Hey, I wanted to say
Yeah.
that quote pulled me through a lot of stuff though, because I resonated with Rocky, and so tell her that really helped me out. I appreciate
Yeah, yeah. I will.
that. Hey,
Thank
I
you.
got one last word for you.
Yeah.
Frappuccino. 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 I
Okay, I'll
love
have one for you.
it. Take care, Hope.
Starbucks, have a
Okay.
frappuccino for Dale.
You bet.
Take care.
Well, that's beautiful. That's a good way to conclude our first episode, and there'll be more to come. And maybe there's a way either Eric or Deborah can put all the faces of all the people in the room. So Dale and I, you can take the spotlight off of us and show everyone else that's in this room with us, because there's a lot of them.
Wow. Wow.
And there's 3 pages. You have to hit, Dale, you have to hit that little blue button on the right of your screen to go to the next page and then the next page. There's 3 pages of
Hold
us
on.
all here enjoying your love and your joy.
Wow. I didn't see all this. So there's a start a new chat blue button. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, no, it's on the right. It's just where you slide to the next. We'll have to work on your Zoom skills. Slide to the next page, and some people have their cameras on page
Oh, here we
two.
go. Here
Yeah,
we go.
page two. There's JC. Jeffrey's there with
The
his
Crizzle's
student.
there. Hey,
There's
buddy.
Gabrielle and Paulina. I see Miguel from Costa Rica. Yeah, there's a bunch
Wow.
of them. Scott, last step.
Wow. There's all kinds of. That's awesome. I
Daniela
had I
is
had no
tuning
idea all these
in
people were
there.
here. Wow.
Isn't that
Okay.
amazing?
That's
There's
amazing. I had no
Andrea,
idea. Wow.
Lorena, Samantha from the UK. Oh, we got international. Brazil, Portugal, Antonio from Portugal. Paulina is on there. Last Step Cafe.
Wow.
There's the workers out there with work with Jeffrey and Last Step there. So it's just beautiful. Joni, oh my gosh. Gabriella, Bridget. So, well, tune in for more to
That's
come. But
amazing.
I was just standing in for JC today, but there's JC will be, I'm sure, back next week, and away they go with episode after episode, and it's something to really look forward to. There's Amanda and Micah; they're part of the ministry, Last Up Ministry too. There's Dale; he's the
Wow.
guy Babe Ruth had to hit some home runs there in the prison to get the thing really cranked up there. And now they
Oh,
are. It's really moving.
you guys are great. I love it. I love it. That's amazing. I appreciate everyone. And see you soon.
Thank you, Dale. Love you.
Take care, Dave. Love you, buddy. Take care.